In life, there's the right way, the wrong way, and in pro wrestling, the con way. My name is Emir, this is Victoire. Before we begin today's episode, I ask that you kindly subscribe to the channel, like and share the videos. It helps us spread them so much further. My guest today began his wrestling training in the late 1990s. He accelerated into the WWE, where he became one half of one of the most memorable tag teams of the early 2000s. He held the tag team title gold and subsequently ended in the NWA, the National Wrestling Alliance, where he held the World Heavyweight title. Ladies and gentlemen, a consummate professional. Today's guest, Rob Conway. Victoire. Victoire gives a special thanks to the EWF and Mr. Jesse Hernandez, as well as SoCal Wrestling TV. Find the app for free on Roku. Staying healthy can be a challenge, but not with Clark's Nutrition and Natural Foods Market. Find the highest quality organic produce and supplements available in the USA. A tattoo is for life, so ensure that your tattoo artist is the very best in the country. Trusted tattoo company and mobile body art bus. Football, baseball, golf, whatever your sport of choice, whenever you visit Palm Springs in the Coachella Valley, visit Legends and Icons, your #1 choice for sports bars. Palm Springs, California, Indian Wells, California, Rancho Mirage, California. They're all considered a destination hotspot, a second home haven. With an exquisite record of negotiating the finest deals for clients, Lowell Folsom III and Associates always deliver. Contact Lowell today at 760-391-2504. Now, on with the show. Okay, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Victoire. Today, I have a very special guest. He's a former WWE Tag Team Champion, former NWA World Champion. He is a consummate professional. Ladies and gentlemen, Rob Conway. Rob, welcome to the show.
I appreciate you having me. It's a great introduction. Makes me feel like I was a bigger star than what I am.
Never downplay it, Rob. You were definitely a memorable star throughout the early 2000s. You know, the run you had with La Resistance was incredible, man. It was very good stuff that you did there.
Appreciate it.
Yep. But for those people who aren't familiar, Rob, and especially with your career before WWE and before the NWA, take us back in time. So tell us a little bit about who you were before you became a pro wrestler.
I'm a kid from New Albany, Indiana. Grew up watching basketball. It's real big here in Indiana.
Yeah.
And I watched wrestling, but I never had any aspirations to get in wrestling. And then the amateur wrestling was nothing like what I watched on TV.
Right.
So I just stuck with basketball. Here in Indiana, where I'm at, I mean, we would get 500-600 people sometimes to an elementary school game.
Wow, that's a lot.
So by the time I got to high school and I was playing there, we played I think 3 times on pay-per-view because the games would sell out fast. And we averaged about 4,000 people a game to our high school games.
Yeah.
So I eventually got a basketball scholarship to a small school, and I lifted weights between the summer of my senior year in high school and my freshman year in college. And it's the first time I really started lifting weights. And I gained like 25 pounds.
That's a lot of weight.
I mean, it was, so it was really encouraging. So then when I went and played basketball at a small school, the crowds weren't big at all.
Right.
So that's when I figured out that I like playing in front of people more than I like playing. It was the notoriety that I like. So I actually got a lot of, kind of recognition from people going, man, you sure are getting bigger, like, so I thought, man, instead of playing basketball in front of nobody, I can continue to lift weights and kind of get that gratification that, that your progress is working because it's something you can see.
Yeah. Tangible. Yeah.
Now I started doing bodybuilding contests at like the local level as a teenager, like 19 and up to 21. And then I was like, okay, if I want to do this, I need to take time off from competing and really get bigger.
Yeah.
And in that time, people started coming up and asking me if I was a wrestler. because I looked like a wrestler.
Yeah.
I wasn't. And then I really started watching it, like, taping one of the shows on Monday and watching the other one around 96, pretty much that. Yeah. And that's what led me to think, man, I'd like to try that. And it just so happens I was driving to work one day and saw a sign that said Night in the Mirror, Danny Davis Pro Wrestling Training.
Wow. Yeah.
That they had a live events at 7 o'clock on Sunday.
Yeah.
So I stopped in and watched one of the shows and, just kind of never left.
Yeah. What job were you working at the time, Rob?
I was renting and repoing furniture.
Interesting. Was it your own business?
No, I was only early 20s. I was just kind of making ends meet so that I could lift weights and try to keep getting bigger.
Yeah.
That was the goal, was at the time, was to maybe be a professional bodybuilder. I didn't really know. I'd never seen any professional bodybuilders in person, so I had no idea they were as big as they are.
Yeah, they are quite big. I remember I met Chris Cormier back in 1999 in England, and that guy was huge, man. Yeah. Who were some of your favorites, that you aspired to look like, perhaps in bodybuilding?
My favorite was a guy named Barry DeMay.
Yes,
he placed in like the top 3, I think, in 1988 in the Mr. Olympia. And the reason that I liked him so much is he's about my height. And that's something I used to kind of look to people who I had a chance to be like.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was never going to be Arnold at 6'2", and I was never going to be some of the other guys that are 5'6". So I try to pick people that were around my height.
Yeah.
And back then, a professional bodybuilder, they were like 230 pounds.
Yeah.
Which is huge, but it's nowhere near what a guy that's 6 foot now would have to weigh about 290 pounds.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
to
changed
be competitive.
a lot. Yeah, it's changed a lot. What were you bigger when you were doing the bodybuilding before getting into the ring?
I started out at about 240 pounds whenever I started wrestling. And I was bigger and stronger, but I wasn't really cut. I wasn't super lean. I was in the bulking stage.
Yeah.
I had maybe a top ab.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it wasn't, when I was the con man in WWE and I looked my absolute best, I only weighed like 206.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. So a lot of people think that I left La Resistance and got bigger.
Yeah.
When really I was like 230 in La Resistance and just lost the fat.
Yeah. Yeah.
To be a singles wrestler, and it made me look bigger.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, yeah, I remember when you did that, you did look considerably bigger, but I think that's the illusion that it creates though in bodybuilding. If you can get stripped down and you can see more shadows, it reveals more of the muscle, and it actually does look bigger on camera. But wow, 206, I wouldn't have thunk it. That's
yeah. So, I mean, I have really blessed with good genetics for like a wide shoulder and small waist. Cause when I was, 205, 210. I mean, I had a 32-inch waist.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it just makes everything look bigger when your waist is small and your shoulders are big.
Yeah. So when you were training, Rob, with Danny Davis, did you still want to dip your toes in bodybuilding, or was it now you were all in for your pro wrestling training?
Yeah, I was 100% pro wrestling.
Okay.
After so first of all, I had told all my friends I was going to do it. Like, hey, I'm going to do this wrestling. And I really thought that I would be wrestling The Rock and Stone Cold in a matter of months. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I'd never, other than going to Danny's, I'd never heard of independent wrestling. I'd just seen WCW, WWE, and the USWA used to be real big around here Tuesday nights at Louisville Gardens. So I didn't know there was a, wrestling in high school gyms, like the paying your dues on the independent scene. Yeah. I just looked at the guys on TV and thought, I pretty much look like that. I can learn this and be up there in no time.
Yeah.
Pretty naive.
It's a humbling experience. And perhaps explain some of that, Rob, because you are an achiever, right? You've got that determination in your personality. And some people do have that when they go into pro wrestling, but they have to learn humility, as we know. So how did you adjust to that? Did you have to get reprimanded, or did you just naturally learn, okay, I'm not, they're going to really work me here until I'm ready?
No, I came in with a huge ego.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, locally where the school was, I mean, everybody around here knew me from playing basketball and from, working at the gym and lifting weights. So I can remember when I first started in the matches, I was a good guy.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point in the match, the heels really beat you up, get
Yep.
you, people, if you're not down, people have nothing to cheer for.
Right.
You got to make a comeback.
Yeah.
And whenever they would be, prolonged, me down, I would get upset that they were trying to make me look weak
Mm. Mm.
in front
Yeah.
of, the
Yeah.
fans.
Yeah.
I didn't really understand because when you're a good guy, you don't really understand the wrestling business until you've been both a good guy and a bad guy, or heel and babyface, depending on how you want to say it. But yeah, that until you've done both, you don't really get it.
Got it. Yeah. You've
So
got
I
to.
had I didn't like losing, didn't like to look weak. It was, yeah. It took a while before it actually sunk in that this is, that's not what they're doing. They're trying to have a good match and get people to cheer and boo.
Yeah. Well, it was very different. You said you grew up, pretty much in sports. So this is theatrics now. So now you've got to be like an actor in many ways. You've got to play to that. So how long did it take for you to figure that out, to come out and understand the theatrics of it? Did it take 6 months or a year in? How long did it take you?
About 6 months in,
Mm-hmm.
I really didn't like wrestling anymore
Okay.
because I was a good guy. You
Mm-hmm.
start out a lot of times as a good guy because you're learning.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't like it.
Mm-hmm.
And back then when I still had a job, well, I had to be nice to people all day.
Right.
Then I got to go to the shows and be even nicer to people.
Yeah.
So I went to Danny Davis because even though I was pretty much, me and Nick Dinsmore were the top guys
Okay.
at the time. And we were good guys tag team,
Mm-hmm.
but I just didn't like it. And I told him, I said, hey, I think I'm going to quit.
Mm-hmm.
It's not fun. I mean, that's why I
Mm-hmm.
got into it, because I thought it would be fun.
Yeah.
And he said, well, what if I was to turn you heel?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, that's what I wanted to do in the first place.
Yeah.
So it was like the world's slowest heel turn.
Yeah.
But eventually,
Yeah.
I mean, over months and months of me hinting that I was kind of bad, as soon as I turned heel,
Yeah.
the light bulb went off in your head, and
Yeah.
I found myself.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was that's what I was kind of meant to be at that time in my life. And I really took off from there and became, a much better performer and in-ring technician.
Yeah, because definitely your in-ring technician, you were great. What was your character back then? So when the independence?
Well, before my first match, Danny Davis gave me the nickname the Iron Man.
Okay.
So I was the Iron Man Rob Conway, and as a good guy, I was just kind of a muscled up guy that really teamed with Nick. We were two good looking young guys and wore similar gear, and we were more athletic looking than most of the people there at the time.
Yeah.
So our gimmick was pretty much just kissing babies and shaking hands, but it really wasn't me. So a lot of times, even though we were both good, people would really cheer for Nick.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And then kind of cheer for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so when I finally became a heel,
Mm-hmm.
my character was um, basically the stereotype of every muscled up, cocky 24 or 5-year-old guy.
Yeah.
If I was anywhere out and I heard something that got on my nerves, somebody said something I thought was a jerk,
Mm-hmm.
and I would keep that in my brain, like, oh, I'm going to use that sometime.
Yeah.
So I was a cocky, arrogant heel, but I also very rarely lost in OVW.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the thing about that is when I did lose, it helped the other guy I was wrestling.
Right. Yeah.
So I mean, that's kind of like That's the one thing about Triple H people don't understand is he kept himself so strong as a heel that when he lost to someone, you knew right then that guy's going to be something.
Yeah. Yeah. You did do a good job with that.
And so winning and losing's not really that big a deal. It's how it's done, and does it help? Does it hurt your character, or does it help the person you're working with?
Yeah, I can see that.
But yeah, as cocky and into myself as I could be. That was my character.
And those characters will last forever. They will always be always be relevant. So how long were you in OVW then before you got called up to WWE?
I was in OVW for 6 years, from 1997 to 2003.
Okay.
Late 2003, I got called up and I participated in SummerSlam.
Okay, 2003. Now, the whole time you were in OVW, you still kept your day job, right? Or did they give you enough to?
For the first 3 years, yeah. And then in 2000, I got a contract with the WWF. And then it wasn't long after that I had to re-sign because they changed the name to WWE.
Okay. All right. So you're in there for 6 years. You get called up to WWE. At this time, Rob, are you married this time, or are you still a bachelor?
Yeah, just a single guy.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm just curious to see if you brought with your family. So when you get to WWE, obviously you end up in the La Resistance angle, which was a fantastic idea for a tag team. I mean, I appreciated it greatly. I know many other fans out there did too. But you came in as the third man. So for what was it, for about a year or half a year, it had been Sylvain Grenier and Rene Dupree. And then Rene left, from what I remember correctly, and then you took his position and you became the second man. Is that correct?
Yeah, Sylvain broke a bone in his neck.
Okay.
And back then, if someone got injured, like, they didn't publicize it. Now they would probably follow him to the doctor, and they do a lot of backstage stuff. But used to, people would get injured and you'd take 3 or 4 weeks before you figure out they hadn't been on TV for a while.
Right.
And they never said it. So yeah, he hurt his neck and still wrestled for a little bit before he got it diagnosed. And then they contacted him and told him to send me all of his gear, which had to be alarming for him, because he's the one that really pushed for me to be in the group in the first place.
Okay.
But yeah, originally I was going to be affiliated with them, but be a singles wrestler.
Got it.
But so when he got injured, I just took that spot, and me and Rene just kind of kept going with it. And then Sylvain actually got healthy right at WrestleMania 20, and he wasn't booked, but he came and stayed in my room. We got a cot. He stayed in my room so he could be around the company.
Yeah.
And then the day after WrestleMania, he ended up getting to come back onto TV, and the three of us were on TV. And then Rene went off and did some stuff with Stone Cold.
Yeah, I do remember that. So what was it like adjusting from OVW? Now you're on TV. Now you're in front of 30,000, 40,000 people. In terms of your mental state, nervousness, anxiety, did that change much for you? I mean, did you have to adjust to it, or were you pretty comfortable with that?
The big adjustment was in OVW, no matter how good that you were, you're still a student. So, it's a training territory. It was the developmental. You still had to go to class. And then when you get to the WWE, they expect you to be good. They expect you to know everything as far as being able to hit your time cues. So I don't want to say it was easier. The in-ring stuff for me I was much more comfortable in the WWE. Because you went out and you performed and you came back, you got a little bit of feedback usually, and then you got ready to go do it again at the next town, without having to. In OVW, we would train up to 5 hours a day. On Monday, Tuesday, we had TV on Wednesday. We would train Thursday and Friday, and then we'd also have live events on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday sometimes.
Gosh, yeah.
But you're always in your own bed. But it's still that the practicing, once you know how to do stuff, it's good to refresh yourself and stay sharp. But 4 or 5 hours a day, After you've been wrestling for 6 years in is a
Yeah.
lot of training.
Yeah, that's a lot of toll. Did you receive any major injuries during that time?
In OVW, the injuries that I received that were the ones that kind of long lasting is I had a really bad concussion during one of the training to where I had a seizure, and
Gosh.
I couldn't form a sentence. I mean, it's one where I had to go to the hospital. And then not too long before I debuted with La Resistance, I had taken a backdrop in a match and I'd over rotated, so my heel and my glutes hit each other at the same time as I landed. It was like I folded, and I tore my PCL in my right leg. And I
Gosh.
was in the process of rehabbing that when they called me up. So they gave me a really nice big brace. If it hadn't been for that brace at the time, I could barely walk.
Yeah, gosh. Yeah, I do remember. I think I saw you with that brace on. Yeah.
Yeah, I
So,
strengthened. I went to rehab eventually where I didn't have to wear the brace anymore. I just strengthened around my knee.
yeah. Well, you got the experience with bodybuilding and weightlifting, which would beg the question then. Obviously, with OVW, you're pretty much stationary. You've got a regular schedule. Now you're in WWE, you're all over the place. So how, and again, calorie wise, caloric wise, I mean, obviously, if you're burning like that, you've got to eat every 2 or 3 hours, right? So, I mean, how did you figure out the gym and your eating schedule on the WWE's schedule at that time?
Well, as long as it's a priority, it's
Mm-hmm.
not that difficult.
Mm-hmm.
If that's, some guys are into working out and eating. Some people, that's not their gimmick, is just being healthy, and you don't have to look a certain way as
Right.
long as they can go in the ring. Me, whoever I traveled with, most of the time I traveled with Lance Cade,
Okay.
and then later with Travis Tomko and Chris Benoit.
Okay.
But we would get up in the morning first thing and meet at 8 o'clock in the morning at the hotel,
Mm-hmm.
go eat breakfast, then go straight to the gym,
Mm-hmm.
and then come back, uh, check out of the hotel, and then usually head to the next town
Mm-hmm.
and just, you know, eat a couple times along the way. I used to bring a lot of food with me. I would bring oatmeal packets, rice cakes,
Yeah.
almond butter,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of chicken in a bag. So it's like a chicken that's in a pouch. They
Okay.
make tuna also.
Yeah.
Sometimes I would eat tuna, but I
Mm-hmm.
always brought enough to where if I didn't have time for a meal, I could get those 40 grams of protein in. I mean, I'd go to the airport and buy a dollar salad at McDonald's and dump my chicken into it and stand there and eat it at
Yeah.
the gate.
Yeah. Now, did it psychologically? Because I know some bodybuilders, I myself included, when I used to be really intense, I would get paranoid about not eating, or I didn't eat enough. I was starting to shrink. Did that ever plague you at first when you were traveling, or not really?
Not as much early on, because whenever I was in La Resistance, I
Mhm.
wasn't that lean. I mean, I
Mhm.
wasn't out of shape,
Right.
but it was a comfortable body fat that I could maintain with minimal, um, cardio.
Mhm.
I was getting plenty of time in the ring.
Yeah.
My muscles felt good because I would say, my body fat was like 10, 12, something like that. It was,
Yeah.
uh, I fit in with the other guys in our group,
Yeah.
but my body at that time was not my gimmick.
Right. Right.
It was the flag.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was that they're French or Canadian and I'm an American
Yeah.
who sees their point of view. So you can understand a French guy seeing a French point of view, but when a guy from New Albany,
Yeah.
Indiana sees that, then it's almost like I was more of a heel than they were.
Right. Yeah. Definitely. You
But
definitely
yeah,
can.
my physique personally, I always wanted to be better,
Yeah.
but professionally, it wasn't. They weren't circling our everything that we did around our physique. The main thing was, work the gimmick. The gimmick
Yeah.
is the flag and the people chanting USA.
Yeah, yeah. Now, presumably, you were working with them both for, very closely in pro wrestling. Did you become good friends from that working relationship?
With who's that?
With Sylvan and Renee, did you become good
Oh
friends?
yeah, they're great.
Okay.
There was a time, and they'll tell you that they didn't get along that good
Okay.
because I mean, but I got along with both of them,
Hmm. Yeah.
and they were much younger too. It was
Yeah.
when I started on the road, I was 29,
Hmm.
and Renee was 19.
Oh wow, 10 years. Yeah.
He
Yeah.
was 265 pounds, 6'2" or 3" at 19 years old, and he
Yeah.
looked like a grown man, but he still did things that were like teenager stuff, and
Yeah. Yeah.
like we'd be some at the mall, and he would like run and jump over a park bench or something. You know what I mean? Like he
Yeah.
couldn't rent a car, so I
Yeah.
had to rent the cars. It was
Yeah.
just, a lot
Yeah.
of stuff like that.
Yeah. No, yeah, he was very, yeah, I remember when he first debuted, and then I found out years later he was 19. I could have sworn he was like 30 or 33. That's what he looked at the time.
Yeah, I think he just turned 40. He looks almost exactly the same.
Yeah.
He's in fantastic shape right now.
Yeah.
So is Sylvan.
Yeah. No, you guys, yeah, ironically, you weren't about the bodies, but yet it's kind of become like that for the three of you years later. You were body guys. Um, but tell us about that run because you were obviously tag team champions. So you'd hit it. At this point, you'd hit it. It turned from a dream to now you're actually one half of the tag team champions in the WWE. At this time, I think Hogan was still around, Flair was still there. So you were still in that crowd of guys that were considered legends. So I know you didn't watch it when you were younger, but who did you start to look up to at that time when you were with them in the locker room?
When the guys that I looked up to when I was actually on the road,
Mm-hmm.
uh, to learn how to be like a better professional,
Mm-hmm.
uh, Triple H is a big. I mean, he's about as professional as you get.
Yeah.
Shawn Michaels. I mean, there's so many guys that were talented that you want to go to the curtain to watch their match, and not just watch them from, Kurt Angle. So like Undertaker, he was never on Raw with me. He was always on SmackDown. So I only got to see like him and JBL at when we do the joint pay-per-views.
Yeah.
So my main group was Flair and Triple H and Shawn Michaels. Of course, Benoit, wrestled on Raw, and at the time he was the top guy. And as far as his work ethic, it was second to none.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's just unfortunate everything that happened with that.
Yeah.
But as far as those guys, being around Eddie, it was kind of limited. But when I was around him, he was a super nice guy, Eddie Guerrero, and he was so passionate about wrestling. I mean, he'd been in it his whole life.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of guys you look at their career and think, man, if I could have something like that, where most of those guys, if you're a wrestling fan, you just have to say one name.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They know who you're talking about.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But prior to getting into the business, Macho Man Randy Savage was number one.
Yeah.
Jerry Lawler, I grew up going to the Louisville Gardens.
Yeah.
The Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah.
I was more of I saw the guys that looked like superheroes and thought,
Yeah.
man, I want to be like that. And it wasn't until I got into the business that I got more of an understanding of, who can wrestle for long periods of time, who's been doing it for a long time rather than kind of made money quickly, which
Right.
if I could have made a lot of money quickly and went straight to the top, who wouldn't want to do that?
Right. Right. Yeah. But when you get into WWE, obviously you've learned so much in OVW. You've got some great trainers there, great friends there. But when you're in WWE, what did you learn that perhaps you didn't learn on the independent and OVW? One of the biggest things.
One of the big things that you learn is that wrestling is a business.
Okay.
When I was in OVW, we were a tight knit group, and we competed because we all wanted to get to the WWE.
Mm-hmm.
But if one of the guys, like in OVW at one time, it was me, Eugene, the Bashams,
Okay.
Brock Lesnar, Randy Orton, John Cena, Batista, Shelton Benjamin. And anytime one of the guys got called up, we were excited for each other.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like a win for all of us.
Okay.
He's going up and maybe I'm next. And then we didn't really compete against each other because we were all different.
Mm-hmm.
If they want a monster, they're going to have to be Brock or Batista. I'm not that, you know. So when I got to the WWE, then you find out more that is the people that you're surrounded by, they're acquaintances for the most part, and you can get along great, but ultimately, you know, they're not going to pay my mortgage.
Right.
You know, we're not that kind of close. So you understand that everybody's kind of looking out for their best interest, because they're the ones that have to feed their family and make their you know, pay their bills.
Yeah. And in terms of that, Rob, I would think merchandise. So how much control, or if any, did you guys have at that time on your merchandise? Because that obviously would contribute greatly to your overall earning capacity, right?
I was never in a position in the WWE to really have merchandise, because it was still a little bit more protected to where bad guys were, you wanted them to hate you.
Right.
You didn't want them to like you and go buy merchandise. So the baby face or good guys had most of the merchandise. And then there's always the heels that are kind of cool. But usually, like a Triple H when he was a heel, or Randy Orton, those guys can sell merchandise and people will cheer for them on their entrance. But then they're so good that once the match starts, they get everybody in line and figure out, you know, get them to cheer the right person. You know, so there wasn't a lot of opportunity for merchandise for heels back then.
And what in terms of capitalizing on yourself, your own image, your persona, signings, store openings, things like that? Were you able to do those sorts of things back then?
No, they owned the rights to just about your likeness and anything that you do. So if they would either send you to something, or say, like you've probably seen, like the Undertaker is going to be at a car show signing autographs.
Yeah.
Well, that place would contact the WWE, pay them a certain amount of money, and then they pay the performer a certain amount of money.
Got it.
Because, you know, the way they look at it, they're the only reason you're famous is because of them. So they're going to control. They're going to get, you know, some money off of your likeness and your popularity.
Yeah. During that time, Rob, because again, you're a very focused individual, did you have thoughts to, okay, when this is over, when I'm done here, I'm going to do X, Y, Z, or Z? Were those thoughts going through your mind at that time? You were a lot younger?
No.
Okay.
Because I always thought eventually I would want to do something else in that, but I had just, you know, was just kind of in my flow, because I had a contract there from 2000 until 2007.
Yeah.
But I was on the road full time from 2003 to 2007.
Right.
And I just got to where I, you know, bought a condo and paid it off. Like I was getting all my things in a row to where, you know, the next 3 or 4 years I would really be able to save a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I had just was kind of hitting my stride, as far as, because there's some things that they teach you, like learning to manage money and learning to pay your taxes. I mean, those are real things that they do a better job of teaching people now. Luckily, I always, I never really spent a lot of money, because I always thought, well, this could end anytime.
Yeah.
Especially when you make a living off your body.
Yeah.
So no, I was really just in the midst of thinking, hey, I need about, you know, 5 or 6 more years and then I'll be set. So I hadn't really given it a lot of thought. Part of my being naive is, if you're not putting 100% of the thought in what you're doing now, if you don't make it or you don't reach your goal, will you look back and go, man, I should have put all my thought into what I was doing.
Yeah.
So I was always like, you say, you know, if you had a business and you made money and you just keep you know, putting it back into your business. That's what I did, but with my time. Everything was watching videos, eating a certain way, always getting new new gear, just new trunks, trying to just be better and better. Cause I thought I would, as long as you're a good wrestler and you show up on time and you do what you're told and you're a pleasure to be around and you're good in the ring, that you would never not have a job as long as you're healthy.
Yeah, exactly. No, you'd think. But you mentioned a couple of things there. So they did help you, or at least now they help you prepare, like the financial stuff. Because yeah, it's great. I mean, what I hear a lot, Rob, is that once you're in that groove, and I'm not sure if it was the same for you, I'll ask you that question. They say that time just disappears. They're in a vacuum at that time. They can't really stop and smell the roses because you're moving so fast. You're always traveling. Was it the same for you?
Absolutely. I've wrestled in 49 states and 12 countries, and I've seen nothing.
Wow. Wow.
The airport, the gym, and the hotel.
Yeah.
And that's because I remember one time we went to Scotland and we had a day off, and Hunter arranged a bunch of people to go to see one of the castles.
Okay.
From Braveheart.
Okay.
And I went to the gym.
Oh, yeah.
Like I said, I feel like I was like an overachiever, so I had to leave no stone unturned.
All right.
So like whenever I left the WWE, I didn't think, man, I should have done. I thought, man, I did everything I could do.
Yeah. Which is it? Sorry.
As far as physically and in ring, I did the best that I could possibly do, and I couldn't have given any more.
Which is a very inspiring way to look at it. Because like you said, you don't have any regrets. And that's the one thing I think many people suffer with in any profession. If they haven't given it their all, they're going to regret it and they're going to wonder why. But jumping back into your story then, Rob. So what was the story behind disbanding La Resistance? Because they were so good. So what was the idea behind that?
I was assuming, because I've never known the exact reason. They didn't say why. The couple things I would think is they were in a feud with the Dudleys, and there's 3 of them.
Yep.
So I think that was part of it. And then the other thing is that Sylvain was very inexperienced.
Okay.
Talented and was learning really fast, but inexperienced. Renee had more experience, but he was really, really young. So I think adding me, because I'd been around a little bit longer, and a lot of the guys that were already on the roster started in OVW, and I was there before them, and then helped them, get to be where they are.
Yeah.
That adding me is a little bit older, had been doing a little bit longer, that it was like almost like the peacemaker between those guys. And when we put the matches together with people that had been doing it longer, it was easier for me to be the one to talk to them. A lot of times I would be like, if we wrestled the Dudleys, me and Bubba would kind of put the match together loosely, and then we would get everybody else involved and get it tightened up.
Yeah, yeah. During that time period, Rob, were you ever approached by I think was it TNA was already in existence. They were the other big promotion, but maybe acting, endorsements or anything like that, sponsorships for especially when you repackaged yourself very lean. Were there any other opportunities for you that presented themselves?
I believe there were, but I was so tunnel visioned that, I met someone that told me that, their husband owned a magazine and he really would like my look and I was like, okay, thanks. And later I found out it was Bob Kennedy that owned Muscle Mag and all the big magazines. And his wife thought that I had the look that they would be looking for, but I just ate my egg whites and went to the gym and just think about it again, or, meeting people and never, and them showing a lot of interest in, trying to help me, but I didn't get their card or ask for the email. It was just, I was after the shows when, people would say, hey, I have a restaurant or this, stop by. I just go back to the hotel and go to sleep and get up. And I was just, it just, my networking skills they never were good.
Yeah. Very regimented, very
Yeah.
regimented, focused. God designs us all in different ways. So obviously, you being like that, I think, is an inspiration to those who find difficulty being like that because they look up to someone like you and think, wow, and they listen and they take those blueprints from what you've just described and it can help them. So yeah, again, it all works together, doesn't it, Rob?
No, I mean, people are the way that they are,
Yeah.
but you can also learn to, some of the biggest opportunities that I've never regretted anything I've done. I've only had some regrets on things I didn't do
Okay.
because I, thought about it so long that I talked myself out of it, or I just, like I said, was focused in one direction
Mm-hmm.
and didn't even think about, hey, the Foo Fighters just told me anytime I want to come to their show, just contact them. I can go anytime I want after hanging out with them. I just
Yeah.
went, oh, that was cool. And then
Yeah.
that was it. Never talked to him again.
Yeah, yeah. Gosh, man. So La Resistance ended. Now you go off and you repackage yourself as was it the con man, Rob Conway, and you come back in with the new physique, the new look. How long did it take you to change your physique? What was that diet like for you to change?
It took about 3 months, three
Okay.
to 4 months. But what people don't realize is that uh, I was kind of off TV
Mm-hmm.
or I would wrestle on Heat, and that was when Heat was international Heat.
Mm-hmm.
So I would still do the live events, but I wasn't on Raw really.
Right.
So it gave me time where I hired a strength coach who was a friend of mine who he actually had graduated from University of Hawaii as a strength coach, and he
Okay.
didn't have a job yet at a college.
All right.
So I did a lot of things I'd never done before as far as all this athletic based training because I always
Mm-hmm.
train like a bodybuilder. Now
Right.
you see people in the gym, I see them doing that kind of stuff all the time, but in 2005 nobody was slamming medicine balls into the ground and
Right.
planking with 345-pound plates on your back with your
Yeah.
hands up against the wall for 2 minutes. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
it was my warm up. When I get done, the floor would be all sweaty like I already worked out.
Gosh, man. Yeah. You could burn through a lot
But
like that.
I
Yeah.
just, and I limited my carbs because I was like, man, I want to get lean as fast as I can. And I'd done it before. When the WWE hired me, they came in, I was like 235, and they said they'd like to see what I look like in better shape. And they
Mm-hmm.
said they'd come back 6 weeks later. I was 206 and ripped.
Wow.
So I knew how I could do it in a short period of time. So I uh I I dropped my carbohydrates down to 60,
Wow, that's low. Yeah. Yeah.
and then I would eat 1.5 grams of protein per body pound. So I was eating about 300 grams of protein a day.
Okay.
So you end up losing, and I would do cardio for an hour a day.
That's a lot. Yeah.
So is that the most scientific? Probably not, because
Mm-hmm.
I didn't look at calories. I just looked at protein and carbohydrates, and I didn't hardly eat any fat. But
Mm-hmm.
I know that me personally, I can eat really low calories, but as long as my protein level stays high, I can lose fat without hardly losing any muscle.
That's interesting. That's interesting. For me personally, if I don't eat the calories, my muscles start to disappear as well. I have to keep the calories up. For me, if I went to 60 grams of carbs, I know we're just chit-chatting now, 60 grams of carbs, I'd be a skeleton within you know, probably like 3 months. My body just, even for me, the lowest carbs I think I can go is like maybe like 150. And after that, I start to lose the muscle mass. So it's interesting that your body will retain that muscle mass because that's what I was thinking. Like you're doing all that cardio and everything. I would surely think your muscles would eat away at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, you would think, but now I can't get away with that. I have to eat more food just to, when I was 31 or 32.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I just really was in tune with, and I'd go by the mirror. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes you just need to eat more food. But I
Yeah.
mean, ultimately, I was in the business of trying to look a certain way so I could look in the mirror and add, because I got down to like 202 one time and I was like, man, because in regular clothes, I look so small.
Yeah. Yeah.
That, it's weird how like 205, 207, 5 pounds doesn't sound like a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're shredded,
mm-hmm.
I mean, it made the difference for me whether I had cap shoulders or not cap shoulders, just because that extra pounds,
yeah,
would fill out. Because when I did have carbs and was hydrated, my muscles looked rounder.
Yeah. 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 Because you were very wide. Now, whose idea was it to change character? Did WWE allow you to come up with the idea, or was that Vince or Triple H's idea?
They said they were going to split me and Sylvan up.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I believe they split us up was because they were really trying to push Muhammad Hassan.
Oh yeah, I remember him.
What would happen is nobody ever told us how to be like anti-Americans. Mm-hmm. We just did it.
Yeah.
Now, I knew Mark Capani, who really good, who was Muhammad Hassan. Well, he's Italian. Like, he wasn't really feeling that gimmick, but they were really giving him a lot of direction. Well, of course, I would be listening to those directions.
Yeah.
I would use it all for us too.
Yeah.
So because he was later in the card, I don't think they liked the idea that for 25 minutes people chanted USA during our match. Then when he went out there, they'd already seen kind of an anti-American group, even though his gimmick or character should have way more heat, and it did have a lot of heat. It's just that having both of us on the same show I think they thought was a bad idea.
Yeah.
So they're going to split me and Sylvan up, and they said, try to come up with something for yourself that, and that's when I thought, man, like what the con man character that I envisioned was the Iron Man character from OVW.
Got it.
Just, I knew they weren't going to copyright the name Iron Man for me.
Right.
So I thought, well, some of the guys used to just call me Con Man instead of Conway. Hey, Con Man.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I can be the Iron Man.
Yeah.
But call myself the Con Man.
Yeah.
And then the Iron Man character as a heel was one of those guys that I stayed really strong, but he was the kind of guy who would talk a big game when your back was turned, and then you turn around and I'd be like, hey man, how you doing?
Yeah.
And that's, so I was thinking the Con Man would be in that realm. And then as the Iron Man, I always came out to, Iron Man by Black Sabbath. So when I thought I would get some like more of a heavy metal song, and be, and then the vision that I had, and I guess the vision they had, were totally different, because when I heard that music, I thought, oh no.
Yeah, totally different.
And we're not on the same page of what I'm thinking this character is going to be.
Yeah. But were they behind it? Because I know at the time, Vince was a big body guy. So were they very much behind you when you told them what you were going to do?
Well, initially, I worked on that character with a writer by the name of Ed Koski.
Okay.
And Brian Gerwick was the head writer. But he was off writing that movie Knuckleheads.
Okay.
So my initial run as the Con Man and getting pushed, where I, went on like a 8-month winning streak, was with Ed as the main writer.
Okay.
So they were really pushing it. I was doing good. When Brian came back, he was like, I don't really understand your character. And I was trying to explain it to him, because what was happening at the house shows, people were bringing signs that said, do it the Conway. People were bringing signs that said, just look at me. Because even though I'm a heel, I really just talk good about myself. And there's a lot of early 20s guys, guys 17 through 30, and they're like, man, they thought it was cool.
Yep.
But when Brian came back, I never won another match.
Yeah. And how long did that go on for?
From, I think, all of 2006.
Did you voice your discrepancies with upper management at the time?
Not really. I mean, there's really, people know when you're not happy. It's just, even if you got a smile on your face, who's going to be happy with, that's when as I started losing more, which
Mm-hmm.
you'd say, well, what does it matter winning or losing? Nobody ever got over and became a top guy by losing
Right.
all the time.
Right.
What happened is that when, whenever I saw the writing on the wall that they don't like this character,
Mm-hmm.
that's when I shaved off my mustache. I had been at one point. The doctors at WWE told me to gain some fat because my fat was so low
Mm-hmm.
that I had ketosis.
Oh,
I was
okay.
in ketosis,
Yeah.
and I would get sick easy.
Mm-hmm.
You're on an airplane, somebody coughs, your immune system's low.
Right.
So then I started eating more, and then between losing,
Mm-hmm.
not getting to do fun stuff on TV,
Mm-hmm.
I stopped paying paying to have a strength coach. It was like, man, I'm just going to go back to the look I had in La Resistance.
Yeah.
It's not worth, denying myself all this food and doing cardio twice a day
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
just come and figure out who am I going to lose to this week.
Right. Right.
Which
Yeah.
is, I wouldn't say it's the greatest attitude to have,
Mm-hmm.
but I still did my work and made
Mm-hmm.
people look good.
Yeah.
It's just, it took a lot of determination and a lot of willpower to be as lean as I was for as long as I was.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of people who've never done that. I did that one time, Rob, in 2003. And yeah, it gets to a point where, at least for me, I couldn't sleep properly because you don't have the carbs to make you if you eat carbs at night, you're going to fall asleep, bottom line, right? So you can't do that on low carbs. You're always, at least to me, Rob, I always felt wired, like on edge sort of thing. Um,
Yeah, if it wasn't for caffeine, I would have been asleep all the time.
yeah, yeah, and tired. Yeah, you get tired, man, big time. So that run, so then you get to that point. You said this rider comes back, nothing's improving. Had you already made a decision in your head that perhaps I'm gonna take this elsewhere? Had you made that decision, or how did the parting of the ways between you and WWE come about?
So in January of 2007,
Mhm.
so December around Christmas, I had a deviated septum where I got hit with the flag once and it broke my nose, and so we had a week off for Christmas.
Mhm.
So which basically means 2 weeks because you're the way it works. So I
Mhm.
had surgery on my nose,
Okay.
and then they contacted me like a couple days before New Year's
Mhm.
and said, "Hey, we want to bring you in and do this match where you say if you lose, you'll quit Raw, but
Mhm.
we're going to move you to SmackDown and we're going to put you and Sylvain back together as La Resistance." So I was
Okay.
like, "Oh, great," because La Resistance was always over. I mean,
Yeah.
we were hated. Didn't matter who you put us in there with; they were going to cheer for them.
Yeah.
So I thought that's great. So, but I said I can't wrestle. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm not cleared. Just got my nose fixed.
Mhm.
And they said, well, we'll bring you to TV and our doctor will look at it.
Mhm.
So, so I came to TV and they cleared me to wrestle, but I was like, hey, I can't get hit in the face.
Yeah.
So I had a match with Jeff Hardy that initially was going to be like 4 or 5 minutes. And then it was like 3 minutes and it was 2 minutes. And I was like, hey, I don't need any time. I just need to go out there because he can't punch me.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
can't get hit in the face. If I get hit in the face, then the wrong guy's going to win this match
Mhm. Mhm.
because
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm supposed to lose. He hits
Right.
me, it's gonna be bad.
Yeah.
So the main thing was that I was supposed to cut the promo, and then Vince was going to fire me on TV from Raw, and then I
Mhm.
would go to SmackDown.
Mhm.
And so the match went off the way it was supposed to. Jeff Hardy, fantastic guy, fantastic wrestler.
Mhm.
Uh, we did our business in the ring. Vince came out and fired me, and
Mhm.
then I went home because he had a feud going with Donald Trump. So I knew I was going to have to stay home until after WrestleMania
Okay.
because if he
Yeah.
fires me with the gimmick leading up to WrestleMania and I show up next week, it's not a very good firing.
Right.
So WrestleMania came and went, and I still didn't hear anything. So
Mhm.
I contacted them and came up to one of the shows just
Mhm.
to be seen. And I think they put me in a dark match where I teamed with Tatanka randomly just to see me in the ring. And then a few months after that, and this whole time, my contract rolled over in January.
Okay.
So I was getting paid to sit at home and do nothing.
All right.
And then finally I got released in May. And then we had a 90-day clause. So I got paid another 3 months.
Okay.
So the year that I got fired, or I made a pretty good amount of money because I had no expenses.
Right.
So it softened the blow a little bit.
Yeah.
But, at the time, if I wasn't going to use me, if I were them, like, I would have let me go too. Because then I made good money. And then 3 or 4 months, if they wanted to hire me back, I would have went back. If they're going to hire you back, they're not going to hire you to do the same stuff you were doing before. They would have had better ideas for you.
Got it.
So that's what happened as far as, as far as how I left there. It was John Laurinaitis calling me to tell me that creative didn't have anything for me when I was already getting new gear made to wrestle on SmackDown as La Resistance.
Yeah. So were there any talks down the line in that, let's say, that was the May you were released, within the next year? Did you try and reach out? Did anyone reach out to you again during that time period?
I talked with WWE again because when they moved their training from OVW to Florida, they talked to me about the possibility of me going and wrestling the better guys in Florida Championship Wrestling, like on the road.
Okay.
Which would have been fun, because the thing is that you need guys that help the younger guys adjust. And it's hard to do that with the guys that are currently trying to keep their spot. If you send a new guy in, I mean, this guy's going to say, hey, I need to make myself look good. But had I known, hey, this is what you're here for. We want you to make this other guy look good, speed him up, slow him down, come back with feedback on what he could do better, just help him. Like a coach. That would have been fun for me. Because then the pressure of trying to become a big star is not there.
Right. Yeah.
Because we're all trying to move up the ladder. So if you said, hey, this is what we want you for, you can either agree to it or not.
Yeah.
But if not, then they want everyone to seemingly want to become the champion, whether you're the last guy on the roster. Grab the brass ring. But if they just told some guys, hey, we don't really want that from you, but we're going to pay you this much, and we just want you to have a good attitude, and tell us what my role is, and I'll either agree to it or not.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense. Like you said, back in the day, everyone was striving to be the best, and they could have been, but if you just laid it out more clearly for people, they'd adjust a lot better and probably work better too, because they'd know exactly where they're going to stay. So TNA, I must ask, Rob. So TNA, forgive me, because I never saw TNA when I was in the UK. I don't think it came. I don't think we had access to that TV channel. Did they come knocking at your door any times? Did you consider doing something similar in TNA?
So Christian left the WWE, and then he joined TNA. And I saw that, and he, I thought, man, he's really doing good there. But then the one time I had talks with him was they contacted me. We started talking about, just how healthy I was, what, just preliminary talks. And then they hired Booker T. And it wasn't long after that the next time I talked to them, they were like, hey, let's keep talking. But right now we just made a major investment in Booker T. And we don't have funds right now to hire another former WWE guy, because I'm sure a lot of the guys that kind of came up with TNA were not making the kind of money that the guys who came from WWE were getting. Because they're just used to making more money and they're already famous.
Yeah. Yeah.
So after that, I saw some of my friends go there, and they wrestled, say, a month or two, and then they lost a couple matches, and then they weren't on TV anymore. So after that happened, I thought to myself, would I rather be former WWE champion, tag team champion, and wrestle independently that way? Because my thought was, if you wrestle for all the promotions, and that it can hurt you in a way, because it's like, oh, this guy's basically, if you got let go by the WWE, and then you get let go by TNA, and then you get let go by Ring of Honor, that it doesn't look as good on your resume as just, hey, I wrestled for the top company, made it to the tag team championships, wrestled on pay-per-views, and now I'm coming to your town.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, maybe it was the right decision, wrong decision, but I'm happy with it. And like I said, if you're a former so many things, you kind of, I think it can hurt your value independently.
Oh yeah, I agree with you. So you were working the independents then was that 08, 09? Because you eventually were in NWA, correct? You became the world champion there in the National Wrestling Alliance. So how many years were you back on the independent circuit? And during that time, were you still able to support yourself from just the independent wrestling, or did you find another investment or a job?
I was real fortunate that I was able to make a living off of, just wrestling. Now, granted, I'd saved a lot of money when I was with the WWE, so I could always supplement my income with money that I already had.
Okay.
But I just really buckled down and never spent a lot of money.
Got it.
I didn't, I've owned my condo since 2003. So not having rent is a huge deal.
That's the big one. Yeah.
So I didn't really have to wrestle a lot of places that I didn't want to go. I mean, there's always times where you sign up to do something, and a week before you're like, oh man, I wish I didn't have to go there. But not the matches, but just maybe the area, it's cold and it's winter and you're going to, someplace in the middle of nowhere. But
yeah,
I was real fortunate that every place that I went, they would bring me back. I learned early that, that whenever I met someone that I'd watched on TV, I was really always hoping that they were a cool guy. That, it's very disappointing if you meet someone and they're not like you thought they were going to be. So when I would go to the independent shows, I would go and shake everybody's hand. So I'm not the guy that sits in the corner and waits for people to come shake his hand. I go shake people's hand. I usually go to the people that take the tickets and talk to them, and the people at the concession stand a lot of times, because I mean, none of us make money if the guy at the front door doesn't collect it.
Right. Yeah. Very true. Very true.
They're pretty important.
Yep. Yep.
So, just if the last thing you would want is to go, yeah, the guy's a really good wrestler, but nobody likes being around him.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah,
I've always tried to be, like somebody to meet me and go, man, that guy was a pleasure to be around. We should bring him back.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, definitely. I mean, I remember the first time we spoke, Rob, you were very welcoming, very, very kind to me. So yeah, you were, yeah, it was good, having watched you all those years ago, and then to talk to you in person and find out you're a decent guy, a nice guy is it's always nice to know. But you did go to NWA, and I must ask Rob, because, we're looking at you today. You're in fantastic shape even today. Are you still doing shows here and there, or are you retired now from the business?
No, I still do shows. I just have to be pretty selective on what I do.
Yeah.
And you say, what do you mean selective? Well, I've found that all the injuries that I've had in the past usually have something to do with not being prepared. Like if you drive 5 or 6 hours somewhere, it's hard to be hydrated enough. Like I've had a lot of torn muscles, and I wouldn't, if the event had been across the street, I wouldn't have torn them.
Yeah.
Because it's really hard to drink enough water and take in enough electrolytes when you're driving places, because you don't want to have to stop, every 25 minutes to use the bathroom.
Right.
So I have to be, I have to leave earlier to, because it's, I didn't become a worse wrestler. I as good as I ever was.
Yeah.
But physically, you have to be able to know what your limitations are. So it's like a lot of times once you really figure it out in your brain and really know a lot about a subject, you physically are past where you can do it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where I have to be pretty selective on where I go and how the accommodation is going to be, because I have to make sure to be hydrated. I have to make sure to have food. I mean, not that other people don't, but you'll see as you get older, you have to really take care of your body because you only get one of them. And I used to be able to wrestle, hardly sleep, get up and work out, and feel just fine. Now sometimes I'm sore. If I wrestle on a Saturday, I might be sore until Tuesday.
Yeah. 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 It changes as we get more mature. Have any of the big companies, Rob, ever approached you for a coach position like an AEW or NWA, Billy Corgan? Have they ever approached you to do anything else for them?
When Billy Corgan first took over, they contacted me about doing a like a Royal Rumble, and I had agreed to it like 3 or 4 months out. And what happened was I didn't hear anything from them all the way up till like the day before the event.
Oh,
so I was like, I just left them a message and like, hey, I did a bodybuilding contest on Saturday. I was supposed to do their show in Nashville, which is like 3 hours away, on a Sunday, and I never heard anything. Okay. Now, in hindsight, the person that I had talked to, worked everything out with, that I knew that he had his assistant contact me, but I didn't know it. It went to, like spam.
Got it.
so it was a miscommunication between me and them. And then the WWE, I've been, I think, 6 times in the last like 5 or 6 years down to NXT and did the guest coaching.
Okay.
And that was a lot of fun. The different times I've gone, different people have been in charge. Like it's kind of now Matt Bloom has always been the head trainer, and he's, does a fantastic job. But it's like, one time I went and, Hunter was kind of over things. And then next thing you know, Vince is back in charge. So it's kind of like, it's never been as, I think, it's never been as solidified as I think it is now. I think now they've got it set. These people are going to be in charge for a while.
Yeah.
And, but I enjoy coaching and helping people, and using my experience to help them. And especially, I'm not a yeller. So like nowadays things are different. You have to be way more sensitive to, to the athletes compared to like when I was training. Yeah. And I always thought it should be more like that, to treat people more like athletes and not yelling and screaming and things like that. But I mean, sometimes when you put a lot of pressure on people in practice, when they get out in front of a large crowd, they can handle it. And that's the old school way of doing things. Like if you can get through this, once you get to the arena and do it in front of a crowd, it's going to be even easier.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. But what would you say about because I did martial arts for a number of years, and our sensei was extremely tough on us. We're going back to the 90s now. So again, a different time. But a lot of people who I say were talented, but come in with that heavy hand and really making them feel like garbage caused a lot of them to quit. So would you say that that, because we know that still exists in many fields, would you say that's the wrong approach? We definitely lean towards this new, let's cultivate this person, not crush them to death and see if they can survive. What would you think? Is there a balance between the two, or is just one way wrong and the other way right?
Well, I have to say, so I got into wrestling in the 90s. When I got into wrestling, I grew up watching pro wrestling. Pro wrestling was like a protected business in which you had to know somebody to get in. It took a while before you'd get beat up in practice, and you just thought that was the way it was until you finally figured it out and they accepted you. Yeah. And that's, I was kind of the tail end of that. So it was but they treated me really well, getting into it. There's a little bit of hazing and just tough love.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's not pro wrestling. This is sports entertainment.
Yeah.
They're totally different things. And the people who, grew up watching pro wrestling that don't like sports entertainment because they still think it's pro wrestling. It's not. They're different.
Yeah.
If you grew up watching football here and then you go into football in England, you're like, man, this is nowhere near as good. They're different things.
Yeah.
So pro wrestling is different than sports entertainment. When you're trying to get the best entertainers who are 50% microphone work and backstage promos and then 50% in-ring work, you're not going to get the talented blue chip athletes or performers to stick with it if you treat them bad and you're too hard on them.
Right.
Because unfortunately, the people who a lot of times who love something, the guy who loves martial arts, who watches it every pay-per-view, who wants to do it, doesn't always mean that he might not be a great athlete. Like, I mean, there's a lot of people that can be successful at stuff and never even watched it before.
Right. Yeah.
They're just good at it.
Yep.
So used to, I think when pro wrestling, you had to really love it because if you didn't, you would quit. Now I think you're trying to make money as a company. So you're trying to find people that fit what you need and then teach them to the best of your ability to do it. But there's not, it's just, if you understand it, that's just, I mean, I feel like you do. Like, if I see somebody walking through the airport and you go, holy crap, look at that person. Now they've got half the battle.
Yeah.
They're already halfway there. Instead of, you could have a lot of passion for something, but you're not, you're 5 foot nothing, you're 100 nothing,
right?
Can't do flips. Like, man, you'd have to really come up with something good for yourself to make it, because it helps if you walk through the curtain and people go, wow, look at that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like even going back, way back, you hear the stories of some of these guys that made it in the 80s and 90s. They weren't per se fans. It was just someone came over to them and said, hey, you look like a wrestler. Do you want to try this? And they were good at it. But it's because, like you said, it was something about that person that they'd already seen the dollar signs on them, as it were. They'd seen the character that they could become. And yeah, I have a tendency to agree with you there. We know that nowadays we have so many independent wrestlers in this country. I mean, it's like there's so much now, probably more so than when you were getting into the business now. So there is that more opportunity for the guys who may not necessarily be what the big companies are looking for, but yet they can still make a living and have fun nowadays. So there is that. The industry has changed, We want to encourage, as anybody who wants to be a pro wrestler is watching this, we want to encourage you too, it can happen. There is diversity now, but Rob, so you mentioned something there about doing bodybuilding competition around the time that Billy Corgan had reached out to you. So do you still actively do bodybuilding shows now?
I did up until 2019 when COVID hit.
Okay.
So my last competition was the San Jose IFBB Pro. I do men's physique in the IFBB. And then COVID hit and it pretty much put a damper on all the events for a while. And then my goal is to do a show again this year, and I'm not sure when. It's going to be in the November, December range, and it'll be in probably Florida. If I'm going to travel, I want to travel when it's warm somewhere other than here, because I live in the Midwest and we get good weather, in the summer. Well, I don't like to travel in the summer because we got good weather. I want to wait and go someplace where it's warm in the winter.
Yeah.
So I have some more motivation. I want to do the best I can and be in the best shape as I can, but at the same time, make a vacation out of it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Have you diversified? Do you own any businesses now? What are you doing today, Rob?
Well, I've still been doing appearances and doing wrestling, but the latest thing is I'm going to be working, I believe around November, I'm going to be working with a company out of Connecticut where I'm going to do online training.
Okay.
Like bodybuilding training, fitness.
Mm-hmm.
And people have always asked me to do it. And
Mm-hmm.
I was certified in it years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But I've always had trouble asking people for money.
Mm-hmm.
Like I need someone else to be them to contact someone else and
Mm-hmm.
then more than me.
Mm-hmm.
If I was selling merchandise at the merchandise table and somebody can't afford it, I just want to give it all to them, you know. So it's really difficult for me if I have information that could help you and you say I'd really like some help, and I'd be like, well, you don't have enough money for me to help you. It's just I could never do that. It's just so I've been my own worst enemy when it comes to like being in business. I need it to appear that I'm working for somebody else or have someone else involved in it, because it's just, I don't know, it's always been something that I've never been, I just always have been kind of too free with my time.
But I think at the same time, Rob, because I can concur with you, kindred spirit here. I think that there is a fine line between the two, though. I think if someone comes up to you, like someone comes up to me, and I just point blank say, no, I can't because of this, Y, Z. I always try to find a solution. Well, okay, well, what can we work with? Is there something we can work with? Sort of thing. So you can still get financial remuneration, but at the same time you can still be giving to the person. I think, again, like you, if it's kind of, it doesn't seem right, like if you're an expert at something and then someone comes up to you and you can obviously see they're dirt, they don't have anything, not I was going to say dirt poor, but that sounds very derogatory, so I'll change that. But someone who is going through a financial hardship, um how can you, without, if you don't have a soul, how can you just turn that person away? It baffles my mind. I'm on the same wavelength as you,
Yeah, I
Rob.
mean, what I end up doing is trying to help them without getting too in depth to where it really puts a burden on my time.
Right.
But one thing I've learned, and this might help you, is when people want to like learn how to eat. Well, I mean, you could write anybody up a diet, but they're not going to do it.
Yeah.
They're not going to change 180 degrees.
Mm-mm.
So I always, instead of wasting your time, first thing I'll ask them, I'll say, write down everything you eat for the next week and then bring it to me and we'll look at it.
Okay.
And that's usually, I've had like 2 people do it, because now they have to invest some time and effort. And if they're not willing to do that, then I would have been wasting my time and breath helping them in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes perfect sense.
So, and that's the other thing too, is that if you help people for free, as much as it sounds like a good thing, people assume that if something costs money, that it must be better.
Yeah.
Because I've had people before where I said, I'll help you and I'm not going to charge you. And they're like, oh, well, next thing I know, they've told me they have a trainer.
Yeah.
Because they thought I was going to give them, bad help because I wasn't going to charge them.
Right.
I'm like, okay, well, shoot, I could have charged you, but I was trying to just help you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but I think it's important for, again, Rob, you and I had a conversation about being, men of faith. We have our belief. And it's still important, though. There is the world, it is capitalism. We do live in that society. But at the same time, we are humans and humanity has to remain. We can't, you know, again, when we leave this earth, we're not taking any of this with us. So, as long as we survive while we're doing it and we can give back and be helpful. I went through a similar experience myself the other day, Rob. So, and I felt convicted that, I needed to give back more. I was starting to maybe lean the other way a little bit. And so, but I think we find our ways. But so Rob, you've got the bodybuilding competition coming up at the end of this year. Is there anything else where fans can look out for you coming soon, sort of thing?
Um, main thing will be if they need to contact me, my email is conwaynwa@gmail.com.
Okay.
And, I reply,
Mm-hmm.
to people that contact me. As far as like wrestling shows, I just wrestled this past Saturday. That's the last time that I had anything planned for a while. I don't like to book really far out in advance, because I find that the further in advance you book something, the more chance there is that it'll get canceled.
Okay.
So about 3 months is about as far as I'll book out. You know, and then get a deposit, because I've learned my lesson over time that, you know, but no, if they want to contact me, they can contact me at Conway at NWA, at Gmail. And then also I'm on Instagram. It's Rob Conway. I think it's the Rob Conway. Somebody already had Rob Conway.
Yeah.
And same way with like Twitter and stuff like that. But no, I mean, it sounds like I'm not doing much, but I feel like I'm always busy. There's not enough time in the day.
Right.
Just because there's always stuff to be done. You know, as far as having hobbies, I've got, you know, I'm married and I have 3 little dogs.
Yeah.
And I live in the hometown that I've always lived in. So, I mean, is always people wanting to go to lunch or go work out. And I've got like 4 or 5 workout partners, and they all can't be there at the same time. So I always have at least one of them.
Yeah. That's cool.
You know, and a lot of them are friends of mine. That it's like a lot of my training partners, they don't look just like me, you know, but it works out, because we'll usually talk for a little bit on the bike. And then once we start working out, the talking's over with, and we might sit a little bit afterwards and talk. But it's good living in a community that I always have, and just having the same people that knew me when I was, you know, playing Little League baseball, and, you know, graduating high school at 150 pounds, you know. So that's one thing. As you become more successful, and I've talked to people about this too, you have to, a lot of times people will act like they don't know who you are and befriend you, but then you find out that they actually knew and are trying to somehow use your friendship for them to get, you know, it's like, how are you using my friendship to get ahead? I can't even use myself to get ahead. But it's something that you people run into. I tell you, a way to know it is if you're out to eat with someone and they answer the phone and they use your full name on who they're sitting there with, then there's a good chance that they're using that to try to impress somebody, and they're not really just your friend.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I've been around. I used to work in Hollywood, Rob. So I wrote screenplays and produced and stuff like that. And, you know, I was at the epicenter of all of that nonsense. And getting away from it was one of the best things that, you know, God did for me. You know, coming back to that sense of normalcy where that doesn't exist on a daily basis. You know, you go to a coffee shop and the person over here would be speaking so loud about, again, like who they were going to have a meeting with later that day, and you could clearly see they didn't have a meeting with that person. It was bonkers back in those days. But no, it's good that you've kept that humility, and that's, I think, one of the testaments about you is many wrestlers sadly did go the other way and they forgot where they came from and everything else, and you've remained grounded. And, you know, getting to know you today and sharing a little bit more of your life with the viewers has been fantastic. We will put the links to all your contact information in the description of the video as well, by the way. So we'll let everybody know how they can get in contact with you. One last question for you, Rob, because I ask everybody this. In your opinion, what is the meaning of life?
What's that again?
In your opinion, what is the meaning of life?
Meaning of life? That's pretty deep.
Yes.
I'll tell you, I was on an airplane once, and I've been on a lot of airplanes. I was on an airplane once, and the turbulence was really bad, and the lights went out. I mean, it really felt like this might be it.
Yeah.
And I calmly to myself said, you know, I had a good run. Everybody that I love knows I love them. I've done the best that I could. And I was pretty like at peace.
Okay.
If that was it.
Yeah.
because that's, you know, like you said, when it comes to finances and things like that, you can't take it with you. Mm-hmm. But the meaning of life for me is that you can look yourself in the mirror every day and say, hey, I did the best I could. I treat people that, the best that I could. And I think that, everyone that I care about knows that I care about them. And that was for me. I mean, I really felt pretty calm. Now I'm glad it didn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not looking to go anytime soon.
Yeah.
But I think, I wasn't sitting there going, man, I wish I'd have done this. I wish I'd have said that. I was like, I'm pretty secure with what I've done with my life.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. It reminds me of don't let the sun go down on an argument, a scripture from the Bible. Very true, because you don't know if you're going to wake up the next day. So, don't leave with that bitterness or animosity or what have you. Rob, stay on the line with me, if you will. I'm just going to say goodbye to the viewers here. It's been an absolute pleasure spending time with you, getting to know you, sharing your story and your pearls of wisdom with the audience. This is what it's all about. So, Rob Conway, thank you for being a guest today. Thank you to all our viewers on Victoire. Until next time, victor what you must victor in your life. I'm Emir. This is Rob Conway. Until next time, have a good one.